Live coverage of the blowtorch testimony this morning from Gordon Sondland.
From John Dean to, as you said, taking a blowtorch to every defense Donald Trump has offered. We don't say this very often anymore because it's rarely true, but I think today changed everything. I think Gordon Sondland's testimony today changed everything with the testimony of others. But the bombshell is that there was no irregular policy channel. There was the channel. Here's the other bombshell today.
As there's nothing here.
I have never seen a day in the Trump presidency like this, ever. And like you, I live and breathe this, like it or not. This was a complete and exhaustive accounting from not only a star witness, we've heard that term, but from someone who could either be the linchpin to the entire alleged bribery plot or a
Right? Congressman, we've been talking about that moment as really one of the most powerful ones that we saw. Why was that important to you?
So much, but what can you tell us about Ambassador Sondland's testimony today? What were the takeaways for you?
Well, it seems like every day the case for impeachment of Donald Trump gets stronger and stronger. And that was certainly the case today, listening to Ambassador Sondland.
A monumental and historic moment on what may turn out to be the worst day with the most damning evidence for President Trump in this impeachment inquiry. Toobin, your reaction?
I would quarrel with the idea that this is the most consequential moment in the impeachment hearing. I would say this is the most consequential day of Donald Trump's presidency because...
You know, this had a real feel of a kind of Murder on the Orient Express to me, that essentially everyone was in on it. Everybody knew what
happened today.
Well, the main thing that happened is you have a witness who said there was a quid pro quo.
If you had these facts on a governor, could you indict on these facts?
Absolutely.
President Trump. I have not seen testimony like this to date in the Trump era. Not Comey, not the diplomats last week who were impressive in their own way. I have never seen a day in the Trump presidency like this, ever. And like you,
I mean, looking at today's headlines, if you thought that Ambassador Gordon Sondland's testimony in the penultimate hearing yesterday, if you thought that was as bad as it can get in terms of confirming a quid pro quo, which of course is not only impeachable, it's potentially criminal. And today, Gordon Sondland's bombshell testimony from yesterday, incredibly damning testimony that Sondland gave yesterday, which will undoubtedly be seen, I assume, will be seen as the apex of at least this round of public hearings in the...
Went back to his post in Brussels, still on the payroll, testifying basically the president committed the crime today, saying it was a quid pro quo.
The bombshell from today's hearing happened when Ambassador Sondland clearly stated there was a...
Let's get right into it. It was an explosive day of bombshell revelations at the impeachment hearings today. Trump's hand-picked ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, pulled no punches, and he said that, yes, there was a quid pro quo.
It's been the most devastating day of the Trump presidency so far. A key witness to the Ukraine scheme provided evidence that there was a quid pro quo and that it was ordered by the president himself. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Sondland's testimony was explosive, shocking, and jaw-dropping. And Sondland also provided damning firsthand accounts of his conversations with Trump himself.
This was a huge day in the Ukraine scandal. There was explosive testimony from Ambassador...
So over the past few days, we've heard from 12 witnesses, but I think the bombshell testimony, as some people are calling it, they're saying the person who spilled the tea, if you will, was Ambassador Gordon Sondland. Tell us a little bit about your reaction to what he had to say.
It was explosive. For him to say explicitly, yes, there was a quid pro quo, yes.
Mr. Holmes claims to have overheard. If you pull up CNN today, right now, their banner says Sondland ties Trump to withholding aid. Is that your testimony today, Mr. Ambassador Sondland, that you have evidence that Donald Trump tied the investigation to the aid? Because I don't think you're saying that.
I've said repeatedly, Congressman, I was presuming. I also said that President Trump...
So no one told you, not just the president. Giuliani didn't tell you, Mulvaney didn't tell you, nobody, Pompeo didn't tell you, nobody else on this planet told you that Donald Trump was tying aid to these investigations. Is that correct?
I think I already testified.
No, answer the question. Is it correct? No one on this planet told you that Donald Trump was tying this aid to the investigations. Because if the answer is yes, then the chairman's wrong and the headline on CNN is wrong. No one on this planet told you that President Trump was tying aid to investigations. Yes or no?
Yes.
So, you really have no testimony today that ties President Trump to a scheme to withhold aid from Ukraine in exchange for these investigations.
Other than my own presumption.
Which is nothing. You really have no testimony today that ties President Trump to a scheme to withhold aid from Ukraine in exchange for these investigations.
Other than my own presumption.
Which is nothing.
Today repeatedly said yes. I talked to the president, I did it on the president's orders, and he says it was a quid pro quo.
I believe this is the beginning of the end. I do too. It's really the beginning of the end. He may be feeling the walls closing in on him. All the walls closing in on him. The walls closing in on him. Breaking news, a new bombshell. One astrologer says this means the beginning of the end for President Donald Trump. Trump will resign. Trump is going to resign. Is this the tipping point? I know we've said it over and over. You think this is a tipping point? And over and over. This is a tipping point. And over and over. Breaking news, President Trump off the rails. There's the beginning of the end today.